What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we are taking a look at the updated Classic 20 Mini Head from Peavey. Let's do it! Alright guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle, and what I do is I take awesome high gain amplifiers, overdrives, guitars, cabs, speakers, pickups. I record them with a simple SM57 setup, and I give you guys the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into E-standard thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes with chronically ice cold hands, I mean, did you go to a doctor? You're in the right place! Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on your way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! Alright guys, so today we are taking a look at the Peavey Classic 20 Mini Head. Now the Classic series has always held a special place in my heart because I had a Peavey Classic 30 when I was first starting to get into gear, and it really shocked me. I honestly bought it for the clean tones, if you guys can believe that or not. I bought it because I wanted to have something for cleans and to do, I was kind of at the time feeling like starting a pop punk band that no one else wanted to start and it never got off the ground. But anyways, I loved the cleans on that. I loved the built-in reverb. It was actually one of the better purchases that I have ever made. I think I paid 200 bucks for it. And it was just an absolutely killer sounding, broken up, clean amp. But what really shocked me is how good the gain was on it. Like, I was not expecting it to be able to achieve high gain levels of any sort, and it absolutely does that. Not only does it do it, it gives it a more of a classic voicing. So every time I plug into the lead channel on the Classic series amps, it instantly reminds me of like 80s thrash metal tones, especially Metallica. It's just the way that the mids are voiced, it's got a very classic voicing to it. And it really reminds me of like Ride the Lightning and like Master of Puppets type tones, because it has that kind of scoopy mid thing going on. When you push the mids on this amp, it tends to get a little bit boxy and a little bit goofy, but there are ways around that, including using a boost. Of course I would use a boost on this amp, but yeah, these things are definitely sleepers when it comes to the high gain thing, so we are going to take a look at some of the high gain tones on this. So Peavey has actually made a slight improvement to this amp. Before, on the lead channel, you could not get any sort of power amp breakup out of it by turning the post or the volume all the way up and the pre all the way down, much like you would on a lot of other vintage amps where you're trying to saturate the power section. Well, they have fixed that in this amp, so you can now get actual power amp breakup and distortion out of this thing. So I'll show you guys that real quick. Obviously, that's not my typical wheelhouse, but I will show it to you. Another one of the updates that they've made to this head is the look. They got rid of the Peavey oval logo and went back to the 80s spiky logo. Oval logo, you're out. Spiky logo, you're in. Yes! And honestly, I'm gonna give you just a little bit of cleans, just because they are good. Now, Peavey did send me this amp to review, but they did not give me any stipulations. They didn't tell me I had to check out the clean channel or the reverb or anything. So even though they sent this out, I'm doing the demo the way that I wanna do it, and I'm saying exactly what I wanna say about this amp. So you guys are getting my honest opinion as always. Please keep that in mind. But the cleans really are that good. So we're gonna take a quick look at that, and then we will jump immediately over to the lead channel. We'll do some high gain stuff with this thing. So for that intro clip, I was playing my Balaguer Typhon with the Duncan distortion in the bridge. We had the Boss SD1 on to boost the front end of the amp, which I have found works really well with this thing, but we'll try a couple different boosts on that lead channel, see what works the best. We're going through the Mesa traditional cab. This is a 1999 cab with the stock vintage 30s in it, SM57 on the V30s. So let's check out this. Let's check out those cleans real quick, and then we'll get right to the gain sounds. little bit of clean, right? I'm going to scoop the mids out. Let's add some bass. Let's add a little bit of treble. They really do sound very, very good. And then the reverb. Really nice clean sound. All right, we're done with the cleans. Let's go over to the lead channel. So I'm gonna start with the pre-gain down at 9 o'clock, and then we will do the bass, the middle, the treble at noon. We're not gonna use reverb on the gain channel, and here's what we have with no boost out in front of the amp. All right, so we already have, you know, kind of a surprisingly saturated tone. Let's actually get that pre-gain down a little bit more. All right, so let's kind of boost that bass, a little bit of mids, and we'll leave the treble where it is. That's kind of nice for that jangly, bright, kind of classic plexi style rock and roll tone. Let's hear how that sounds. Pretty good, right? It definitely does that vintage Marshall kind of overdriven thing really well. Let's go ahead. I'm actually gonna pull that preamp gain all the way down. All right, guys, so I have actually taken the preamp gain and put it down just above 1, and I have dimed the post gain to see what kind of like power amp breakup we can get out of this thing. I also have the bass and mids pushed pretty high with the treble rolled back. Let's do that same riff and see how it sounds. That sounds really cool. Let's see how it cleans up with the volume. All right, so definitely gives you a really cool kind of saturated power section thing going on when you dime that volume and add just a little bit of the pre-gain to push it. It sounds really, really good for that type of tone. And it is loud in the room, but honestly, I think if I were personally to run this amp, I would run an EQ in the loop anyways, just to kind of get it a little bit closer to where I would want it, and you could actually use the level on that EQ to even bring the volume down. So yeah, really cool feature. That is something that people were a little bummed about on the other Peavey Classic 20 Mini head, because one of the great things about the Classic series is pushing the head into power amp distortion. So good job on that, Peavey. We're gonna go ahead and go back to normal here, and we're gonna start getting belligerent with this thing because you guys are here for the high gain tones. All right, so let's go ahead and push that gain right up to 11 o'clock. And immediately we've got way more saturation going on. Let's go ahead and push it even more because we want the metal tones. Okay, so we are getting closer to a high gain tone. One thing about the Classic is there's a sweet spot between 6 and 7, it seems, on most of the amps where the saturation really kind of kicks in, the compression kicks in, it starts to smooth everything out quite a bit. The gain is kind of raspy, kind of bright and broken up on the prior to hitting that sweet spot for the high gain stuff. So keep that in mind. As soon as we bump over that threshold, you guys will hear it. You'll hear how much the amp smooths out and compresses in the preamp section. And once we add an overdrive into that, we can really start to get some awesome high gain tones out of it. So here we are at 6. I'm gonna go ahead and just show you. So it fattens up, it smooths out a bit, it darkens the amp up. We can actually start to introduce more treble. I'm gonna dial the mids back a bit and the bass back because It fattened the amp up pretty significantly, and the mids kind of control a lot of the low mids on this amp. That's where some of that boxiness comes from, is the voicing of the mids. So when we reduce the mids, it kind of reduces that boxiness a little bit. So there we are very saturated at the moment. I'm actually gonna pull that bass back even more, pull those mids back even more. Let's go ahead and push that gain up even more. So we're getting there, but the more that you push the preamp gain up on this amp, the fatter and the sloppier it gets. It's much like a JCM 800 in that way. If you push the gain high on a JCM 800, it tends to start to fall apart. So yeah, as you can see, not the most pleasant sound. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pull that gain back. We're gonna hit it with that SD1 again. All right, so with the boost engaged, the gain is still a little bit ratty, it's still a little bit broken up, but it sounds very good for that kind of 80s dirty thrash metal thing. In my opinion, I think it sounds really cool. The low end is fairly tight, but it also has a little bit of breakup to it. Keep in mind, we are fairly loud and we are going through a pair of EL84 power amp tubes. There's not gonna be a ton of headroom in this amp. So let's actually pull the volume back down a little bit. We can go ahead and pull the highs and the mids back up just a tad. I'm personally really digging that tone. I think it sounds great. Let's go ahead and scoop the mids out even more and see what kind of tone we get. That actually sounds good to me because that is more of a classic Peavey. The mids are so forward on this and they're so broad, there's so much low mid that it just tends to sound really boxy when you push that mid up anywhere close to noon. So dialing them back a little bit definitely helps. Let's dial up some of the volume to compensate. I do not tremolo pick a lot, and it shows. So yeah, it honestly, I mean, if we dial them back even more, kind of gives us that classic death metal sound. I'm gonna dial the treble up to compensate. I think I may like that than the tones that I was going for. Let's go ahead and turn those mids back up though. That sounds good to my ears. All right, so one thing I have noticed, we're turning off the SD1. Let's go to an overdrive with maybe a little bit more output. We're gonna go to the Walrus Aegis, which has a ton of output. and definitely has more high end. So let's pull that high end back on the amp. All right, that sounds awesome to me. A hotter overdrive, in my opinion, will do a little bit better on this amp because when you push the gain, it does fatten it up. It does introduce a little bit of breakup and darken it up. So right around where you hit that sweet spot on the gain is kind of where I like to keep it, because pushing it too far past that does fatten it up a little bit too much for my liking. Now, this amp obviously was not made with thrash metal and death metal and obviously modern metal in mind, but will it be able to pull those tones off with the right pickups and the right overdrive? Yeah, I think so. I definitely do. So here is the Walrus Aegis Overdrive. All right, so let's try my old standby, the MXR Badass Modified Overdrive. I actually think that sounds the best of the bunch so far, in my opinion. So let's switch over to a guitar with EMGs real quick, see how it reacts to active pickups, and then we will call it a day. And that is if I can continue to put full words together. All right, guys, I have my Solar E series guitar here with an EMG 85 in the bridge. Let's see how this thing sounds with active pickups. All right, so definitely more compressed, a little bit darker overall. We could probably bump those mids back up, get a little bit more low, and a little bit more treble. All right, so sounds just fine to my ears. I actually almost might prefer it because the smoothness of the pickups benefit the kind of crunchy and raspy gain of this amp. So that's cool. Last but not least, down-tuned. And I have the Electric Eye Mud Killer Overdrive engaged. Let's see how that sounds. I'm gonna push the bass up just a tad. That actually does kind of remind me of like old school death metal tones. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for me today on the updated Classic 20 Mini Head from Peavey. What did you guys think? Really curious to hear about your thoughts down in the comments. I wanna hear your opinions. Do you own any of the Peavey Classic series, and what are your experiences with them? What do you use them for? Do you think I'm an idiot for trying to get high gain out of these amps, or do you agree that they absolutely work for those types of tones? Always interested to hear your guys' thoughts. If you liked the video, hit the like button. It really helps me out, and consider subscribing so you don't miss my future videos. And if you want to support what I do here on the channel, down in the description of this video are all my support links, including my Sweetwater affiliate link. Click that link, get yourself something nice from the fine folks at Sweetwater. I get a little kickback, it costs you nothing extra, and it greatly helps me grow. Or consider becoming one of these fantastic people here by joining my Patreon community. If you'd like to support the channel that way, I would love you forever, whether you want me to or not. And last but not least, consider becoming a member of the Belligerent Amateur community by joining my Facebook group and my Discord server, all down below in the description of this video. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time.